Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna. Welcome to your place for all your filthy casual takes on the world of sports, for you filthy casual sports fans out there like you and me. In this episode, we're here to talk about the upcoming Super Bowl, Super Bowl 59, and we're here to talk about everything in regards to the big game coming up between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs here in this preview of the big game. So that's what we're here to talk about here in this episode, here on episode number 250. 250 episodes of this icy yet spicy sports podcast for the filthy casual fan out there. So thank you all for 250 episodes, by the way. And crazy that we've been doing this for about 4 years now, and we're 250 episodes in. So thank you all so much for tuning into my filthy casual butt for 4 years. And let's continue to grow the podcast and continue to share the word of mouth about it. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started talking about this Super Bowl coming up this coming weekend. Make sure to follow the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast on social media at Very Cold Lasagna, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram. And if you're listening to this on your favorite audio platform, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to continue to do so. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to smash the like button. And if you're not subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Smash that subscribe button and then leave a comment down below with your own takes on each and every topic at hand. This being the Super Bowl and our little preview coming up with the Super Bowl and what your prediction is, who's going to win the big game. Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. And as always, share this with your friends, share this with the neighbor, share this with a stranger, share this with your colleagues, whether it's at work or school. Share this with the good, the bad, the ugly about this filthy casual podcast entitled Very Cold Lasagna. And like I said, thank you all for 250 episodes of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast, both on audio and on video. Thank you all so much. Let's continue to have even more episodes of this filthy casual show titled Very Cold Lasagna. So continue to encourage you all to listen to it. Encourage you all to share this with everybody that you want to share this with. Let's continue to grow this rather filthy casual platform. So that being said, let's talk about this. I don't know what you want to say about the Super Bowl. This rather, I don't know, not so hype, not so interesting Super Bowl coming up. This big game coming up in New Orleans this weekend. It doesn't really feel all that big. Maybe because it's a Super Bowl rematch, and I know last year was a rematch of last year, but at least with last year, there was some sense of intrigue. There's a sense of hype behind it, like the Chiefs going back to back, and whether the 49ers can finally knock them off. Well, I mean, there is a sense of whether Philadelphia can do that this time around too, because it is technically a rematch of 2 years ago. But at the same time, I think we're all just waiting for what many of us are expecting. And that is the motto that I gave the Kansas City Chiefs before the season started, when I did my season preview of the Kansas City Chiefs back in July. And that was eat, sleep, conquer, the repeat. So that's pretty much been the motto. That's pretty much been the motto that pretty much everyone's been waiting for this coming weekend. They're just waiting for the clock strike zero in the fourth quarter, and whether or not the Chiefs will be getting that three-peat. So how did we even get here? How did both of these teams even get here to New Orleans? And what could have been, but alas, we're at this point once again with two of the supposed best teams in the NFL once again back at it at the Super Bowl. in the last 2 of 3 years. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about both of these teams as we get set for this clash once again for the second time in 3 years. Starting off with the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Chiefs, this is their third straight trip to the Super Bowl. But prior to that, they were entering this season as the reigning, defending, undisputed back-to-back Super Bowl champion. 2 years ago, around this time, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles to claim title number 1. Last year, they beat my San Francisco 49ers. So entering this year, they had one goal in mind, and that was that 4-word mantra that I gave them going into this season. Eat, sleep, conquer, the repeat. So that was basically the goal for the Chiefs. And it's a mantra that no team has ever accomplished before. There have been multiple teams that have done that and have gotten close to it, but not as close as Kansas City has gotten before. So as the closest that any team has gotten is the conference championships, and that's it. But the Chiefs, this is the closest that any potential three-peater has gotten. So for the Chiefs, throughout the regular season, they've looked well on their way to living up to that mantra. Starting off the season 11-0, but when you look at how they played throughout the season, none of their wins came easy, because they would always get into these tight scraps against their opposition. Patrick Mahomes not exactly would have the best season this year. I think it, honestly, in my opinion, would be his worst, but it's not like it was bad or anything. But they would let their opponents hang around too much. But nonetheless, they would still win their games, albeit at the last moment, because Harrison Butker would bail it out. The opposing team would turn it over to them, or you'd get some utter shenanigans that would save their butts, like, ref ball shenanigans, per se. So they start off the season 11-0. They would lose their first game against the Buffalo Bills. So overall, they would finish their season at 15-2, winning the AFC West once again, earning the AFC's top seed for the third time in 5 years. And even with all these questions surrounding their play, these Chiefs were still on track to making history, trying to become the first ever team to three-peat in NFL history. And when you look at how they did in the playoffs, they beat C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans in the divisional, despite, in another close matchup, letting them hang around despite the Texans' litany of mistakes. And then in the AFC Championship game, they survived another nail-biter against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship game. So they managed to win that one and go on to their third straight Super Bowl. So here they are on the cusp, 4 more quarters away from potentially being a history maker, like the first ever history maker, that being the Chiefs. So when you look at this team, when you look at this Kansas City Chiefs, in my opinion, I wouldn't say as good as their previous 2 iterations, but they're, I'd say, a bit more strategic, a bit more strategic per se. When you look at the biggest strengths of this team, that being the Chiefs, obviously you can't count out Patrick Mahomes, because Mahomes will always keep the team afloat. Sure, Patrick Mahomes hasn't played his best year in terms of racking up explosive plays or racking up the scoreboard, but Mahomes is still a very effective quarterback that will keep the team producing in the air, will keep the team moving with both his arm and his legs, especially when you get to crunch time when it comes to Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes will always keep the offense moving, afloat, gain the key first downs, and gain the team on the scoreboard, even if it's not the flashiest of plays. So Mahomes will always keep the ball moving. And then this team, the backbone of it for much of this year has been the defense. That Chiefs pass rush led by George Karlaftis and Chris Jones, it's one of the best defensive lines in the entire NFL this year in getting to the quarterback, forcing fumbles, especially to the quarterback. So that pass rush has been a very effective unit. So, and then looking at the back end of that defense on the secondary, if they allow chunk plays, that back line is probably the best it's been under Steve Spagnuolo. Because remember that the passing defense under Spagnuolo, it's been very attackable. Even 2 years ago when they faced Philadelphia, it got torched a lot in that game. Even against the 49ers, it got torched a good amount in that game. But this time around, I feel like this secondary, it can lock down a good amount of Philadelphia's role players. So this Philadelphia secondary, it's been pretty good in not allowing too many points or explosive plays. There are some pretty good lockdown corners like Trent McDuffie in this one. And yeah, they're also been able to create a good amount of turnovers on this team. But there are some areas to concern with this group. For as good as they are, I would say for as good as that receiving core is, because there are a bunch of players on there has been some consistency issues with them. Like, you have all these receivers like Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Worthy, but sometimes Patrick Mahomes, he's had trouble connecting with them on key downs. So, and they also have a little bit of an issue like starting off strong with that passing game. So, yeah, the receiving core, it does have some troubles, but I mean, it's not like a complete major issue for Kansas City to be worried about. But what is a little bit of a worry though is staying hot for all three quarters, because that's what has caused Kansas City to win all these close games all year, because it just felt like they were cruising along throughout the rest of the regular season, and even during their playoff games, it felt like they were cruising through through 3 of the 4 quarters. And once they got to the 4th quarter, it's like, oh, we got to really lock in. It just felt like they were on cruise control and just letting teams hang around until they had Mahomes play clutch ball to win it all for the Chiefs. And yeah, that's basically how they won a large chunk of their 15 of 17 games. So yeah, their 3-quarter play, it could be a little concerning if you're a Chiefs fan, and if that's something Philadelphia exploits and they attack, then that could be troublesome for the Chiefs. So when you look at the Chiefs, they're a pretty good team, but if you attack their weaknesses, and in mind, these are not like game-breaking weaknesses, but if you make them game-breaking weaknesses, then the Eagles can definitely attack them. So looking at the Philadelphia Eagles on the other side, when you look how they were a year ago, a complete contrast. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they entered this past season looking to put 2023 into dust, because how they were like going into the previous year, like the previous two years ago, coming off that Super Bowl loss to the first Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, and then they entered 2023 trying to get back to the Super Bowl, and they were on their way to getting back there, but they finished off the 2023 campaign on a December collapse, and then they got their butts whooped in the first round by Tampa Bay, because the weaknesses that exposed itself in that loss to the Chiefs in that Super Bowl were coming to its rear ugly head, like the passing defense, and then Jalen Hurts making a bunch of mistakes in those games. So all all of it started to unravel on itself in that December collapse of 2023, and then going into that first round matchup against the Bucks. So Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman made a bunch of sweeping changes in the offseason, including to its offensive coordinators. They got rid of the previous crop and brought in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. So they brought in those guys, and they brought in a few key free agents, and then in the draft they revamped the defense because that was the biggest weakness of 2023. So things started off rough as the team tried to adjust with their new coordinators, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. They started off 2-2. Jalen Hurts was pretty iffy to start off the year, and after they won over the Cleveland Browns at home, just to go 3-2. Right before they left the field for that loss, cameras caught Nick Sirianni jaw-jacking at Eagles fans, and people are calling for their jobs for another slow start to the game. Then they went on this 10-game winning streak. Nick Sirianni held himself accountable for that, and then they were well on their way to a 10-game winning streak. They didn't lose until I'd say late December against Washington, but then the week after they wound up winning the NFC East. And then they finished the season overall at 14-3, matching their record from their Super Bowl winning season 2 years prior, but this time as a 2 seed. So when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, you look at how they were constructed this year compared to 2 years ago, and they overall, like, I'd say they're much better defensively, and they're still kind of the same offensively, but they got a better running game. So when you look at how they stack up in the playoffs, they had to play at least one more playoff game in the Chiefs, but I'd say they took care of it with relative ease. Like in the first round, they took advantage of the Packers self-destructing upon their mistakes, easily handling them in the first round. And then the second round matchup with the LA Rams, a little bit of a tougher task, especially in the snow. But Saquon Barkley, he got those 2 big touchdown runs in. And then they had to get a big 4th down stop on Matthew Stafford and the Rams for the Eagles to hold on to move on to the NFC Championship game. Then in the NFC Championship game against the Commanders, Jalen Hurts in the passing offense, they finally came to life at the right time. Jalen Hurts threw for over 200 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns to show for it against the division rival Washington to get the Eagles back to the Super Bowl. The Eagles had I believe they had a 40 or 50 bomb in that game against Washington. And yeah, it was probably one of the more impressive showings that the Eagles offense had besides their running back. So they all actually came together to had an impressive showing before the most important game of the year. So when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles and how they stack up when it comes to their strengths and some things I should be a little concerned about going into their matchup against the Chiefs, well, obviously the biggest key to success this season is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley came over from the division rival Giants, and Saquon, he had a clear chip on his shoulder this past season when the Giants, they let him go. They let him go in free agency, and Saquon, he signed over to Philadelphia, and he showed his old team that he could still go. He could clearly still go, and yeah, he's proven that he's been the engine for the whole offense the majority of the season, and he can plow through opposing run defenses regardless of how good they are, going off for these big, large runs, especially proven in the playoffs against the likes of the Rams, the Commanders, getting all these big run, like 60+ yard runs for touchdowns. So Saquon, he's been the pretty much the focal point of this offense. Even if you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts. And looking at the defense, because as I said at the start of talking about the Eagles, the defense was the biggest weakness last year and then in the Super Bowl for Philadelphia. So last offseason where we were when talking about Philadelphia, this was the area of attack that General Manager Howie Roseman needed to address. And that's exactly what he did. And look at the results for Philadelphia. You look at a group like the corners, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell in the draft. Like they are a really standout duo that can lock down on opposing receivers and keep up with them. And they've been greatly assisted by the veteran trio of Darius Slay and then the safeties C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who came back from Detroit, and then Sidney Brown in what has been a greatly improved passing defense. And then looking at the front four that's been led by Jalen Carter, they can greatly get to the quarterback, especially Jalen Carter, who's been having a great year inside the pass rush. So overall, when you look at this Philadelphia defense, much improved from where they were a year ago. But for as good as Philadelphia is defensively and where they are with Saquon, there are some areas of concern with Jalen Hurts and that passing attack. Because Saquon's very big MVP-like year has put some pressure on Jalen Hurts. And I don't mean like a lot of pressure. Actually, it has put some pressure when defenses have come to target Saquon, come to like shut down Saquon, especially when they let Saquon have that initial burst, and then when they come to target him more, it puts the focus more on Jalen Hurts in that passing attack. Because when it puts more focus on Jalen Hurts in the passing attack, there are times where Hurts in the passing attack have been out of sync for a good amount of the season. So A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have noted a number of times that they need to get back in sync with Jalen Hurts. They need to get more targets. And I feel like it hadn't happened yet until the NFC Championship game for them to finally get that. With the Commanders zoning in on Saquon more. And that was when, Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore said, you know what, we need to dial this up. We need, if we're going to go to the Super Bowl, we need to get Jalen Hurts back on track, back to where he was 2 years ago as that MVP-like quarterback. We need to get him throwing the ball more. So this passing attack has been pretty inconsistent for a large chunk of the year, but looking at the NFC Championship game, maybe that was the signal for Nick Sirianni to get his quarterback back on track. It's not a major concern, but I'd say Jake Elliott, their kicker, who has had a couple of consistency issues at times throughout the year, including in the playoffs at times. So if it comes to a kicking situation where the Eagles need to get a game-winning field goal and he misses that kick, that could spell trouble. And that could be trouble for his head too, from Eagles fans. So looking at their last Super Bowl matchup for both of these teams, these two teams first met 2 years ago in Arizona. The Eagles led the Chiefs by 24-14 at halftime, but the Chiefs wound up coming back in the fourth quarter behind Mahomes' 2 touchdowns to Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. One of them are still in the team, by the way, but nonetheless, as well as a go-ahead field goal from Harrison Butker to win it 38-35. Butker, his game-winning field goal, it was set up, though, by a controversial defensive holding call on Philadelphia corner James Bradbury. So that gave a little bit of an assist for the Kansas City Chiefs, but alas, it was the beginning of their quest for a three-peat. So looking at the injury report for both of these teams, for both of these teams, by this point of the year, neither one have any pressing injury concerns which, going into a game like the Super Bowl, that's exactly what you need. You want to have the healthiest team possible going into this game. The only thing that you do want to report, though, for our teams, our potential players that you may want to bring back. For the Chiefs, that's receiver Sky Moore, who injured his abdomen in Week 7. He was designated to return from injury reserve, but they haven't decided on whether they want to activate him because, well, they have a litany of receivers, so it's like, do they really want to use him? I don't know. And considering how they were 2 years ago compared to now, I mean, we'll see. They may not need him, so it's not the same situation as it was 2 years ago. For the Eagles, edge rusher Brandon Graham, who was injured in Week 12 with the torn triceps, he was designated to return from injury reserve last week, and he's on pace to return for the Super Bowl. So they're most definitely going to need Brandon Graham, but it all depends on if Brandon Graham is ready to go. So it'll also be another big boost for the Philly pass rush if Brandon Graham is going to be healthy and ready to go. So in this Super Bowl rematch where Philly is going to be gunning for revenge, looking at the keys to victory for both of these teams, for the Chiefs, you want to silence Saquon to force Nick Sirianni's hand to make Jalen Hurts throw the ball more. Saquon is the heartbeat of that Philadelphia offense, but Steve Spagnuolo, his run defense is just as good. If Chris Jones and the rest of the running defense front can minimize Saquon in the running game, Kellen Moore and the offensive coordinator, he'll be forced to call for Jalen Hurts to throw it more. This could work for or against Kansas City, since Jalen performed pretty well in the NFC Championship game when he had to throw it more to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and a bunch of other receivers. But their back end secondary is much better, that being the Chiefs, it's much better than what the Commanders, their like lack of a passing defense was. So, make that for what you will if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. So, you still want to shut down Saquon Barkley, but do that for what you will in trying to force Jalen Hurts to throw more, and dependent on what kind of Jalen Hurts you'll get in the Super Bowl. Offensively, Patrick Mahomes in the offense has to stay hot for all 4 quarters because, they don't have this issue doing such to start the game, but they tend to let teams hang around for much of the game up until the 4th quarter when they need to lock in to get the win. And, going into a game like the Super Bowl, you can't have that. Like Mahomes and the Chiefs, they should very well know this by now. Going into their 3rd straight Super Bowl, you need to, on every possession matters. Because you have a loaded offense that has Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, and Juju Smith-Schuster all at their disposal. Patrick Mahomes needs to ensure that this offense stays hot for nearly every series the offense is on the field. That Philadelphia defense is pretty damn good, but Patrick Mahomes has all these weapons at his disposal that they can confuse the heck out of that Philadelphia defense for them to be even hotter than that Eagles defense. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he has to repeat his NFC title game performance. He has to be consistent. Whether or not the Chiefs zone in on Saquon or not, the Eagles must have Jalen Hurts throw it much more like he did in the NFC title game than where he did very well with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, and even to Saquon, because Saquon is also a pass catcher. So this is a game where you have to balance out, letting Saquon run, but also letting Jalen Hurts throw it, so he gets stay fresh in this game. And then defensively, limit Patrick Mahomes within the pocket and prevent his weapons from getting big gains. They did a decent job of this 2 years ago in the first half before they just suddenly started letting them crawl back in the game in the 4th quarter. Mahomes in this offense is, it's not the same explosive one that they met 2 years ago, though despite possessing even more weapons than they had back then. But Jalen Carter and that front seven, especially if they're going to get Brandon Graham back, they need to get Mahomes in the pocket, keep him in there frequently. And when they see the likes of Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, and Travis Kelce, they need to tackle them on the site of the catch. Every catch needs to be a tackle on site, like within their range. So they need to limit almost every opportunity that Mahomes can to rip off, whether it's a little one or a big one. They gotta minimize those opportunities from that Chiefs offense. So yeah, this game, it's really not. I don't know, man. Maybe it's just me. It's not like a pretty hype game that, I mean, it's just me personally that I'm not looking at forward to, and I don't really see it talked about all that much around social media or in the media and like in the TV media in general. It's like I don't see it talked about a lot. Maybe because it's a rematch, and maybe because everyone just is expecting the inevitable, man. And that's the problem when you like no, you're expecting the inevitable. But when it comes to, who am I going with? What can I really expect? Well, the Eagles may have the talent advantage, and they're greatly improved from where they were coming off the last Super Bowl loss to Kansas City 2 years ago. They do have that talent advantage. They got a better defense than before. They have a better running back. They have a pretty stacked offense. They have a better talent overall than Kansas City. But just like with the Texans and the Bills, the Eagles are going to be competing in a handicap match against the Chiefs, because on the Chiefs side, it's going to be them, the refs, Roger Goodell, and the Swifties all on their side in a handicap match. The Chiefs are going to be doing everything they can to cap off unprecedented history. And I think the Chiefs are going to get exactly what they want in New Orleans this Sunday. And that's going to be eat, sleep, conquer, the repeat. The three-peat is going to come to fruition in New Orleans this Sunday. Honestly, let's just get it over with. Let's just get the three-peat over with and move on. Let's just move on with it. I know the Eagles will do all they can to stop it, but I think it's going to come to reality. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any stopping it at this point. So, yeah, those are my little preview, my thoughts, and my little prediction for this upcoming, like, not so hyped Super Bowl. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on this upcoming Super Bowl in New Orleans, Super Bowl 59, in the comments on YouTube. Let's have a conversation about it, or slide into my DMs on social at Very Cold Lasagna. Yeah, are you guys excited for the Super Bowl? Are you guys not excited for it? Are you guys more excited for the halftime show with Kendrick Lamar? I'm not even excited for the halftime show. Like Kendrick Lamar, I'm not really a fan of Kendrick Lamar, but if you guys are, they're cool. But man, this Super Bowl is just nah. My season ended a month ago. My season ended a month ago. That's how bad it is right now. But yeah, let me know your thoughts and predictions on this upcoming Super Bowl, or let me know if you're excited for the commercials too. At least that's something to look forward to. But I guess we could just revel in the fact that it's almost over. The season's almost over. Let's try to soak in this last game, and then we have to wait another 7 to 8 months before the NFL season again. So let's take in the last 60 minutes of football, the last 5 hours of football this Sunday, and then we have to wait again. So yeah, let me know your predictions in the comments below, or on my socials at Very Cold Lasagna. But until then, until we talk about the Super Bowl again, recapping it, talking about the inevitable winner, thank you for tuning into this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna. Thank you for tuning into episode number 250 of this icy yet spicy podcast titled Very Cold Lasagna. And thank you for 250 episodes of the podcast. And I appreciate you all. And until the next one, until I see you all then, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your filthy casual takes. And until I see you, when I see you in the next episode, peace out.